Hello. Hi, everyone. Hope you've all settled in and had a chance to take a look at this QR code. If not, don't worry, we'll come back to this later. Move on. Welcome to this talk on remote working and how you can improve relationships from afar, entitled Growing Closer Even If You're Miles Apart. Let's get right into it.
Hello everyone, yes, my name is Simon Marshall and I'm a marketing manager from Auroch Digital. I've worked here since August 2022 and have been remote throughout my time at the studio. I'm based in Scotland between Glasgow and Edinburgh and wouldn't have been able to join Auroch without the benefit of remote working. Adele, I'll pass it over to you.
Hello, I'm Adele. I'm a social media coordinator at Sumo Group. I've been at Sumo Group for just over a year now, and I've been in the industry for around 2 years. I work fully remotely in around the Liverpool area, and I personally love the freedom that remote working brings, especially regarding Sumo's policies around flexible working. So let's talk collaboration. The theme of this year's SDC is collaboration, and Simon and I thought it was only natural to talk about our personal experiences working remotely, both at Sumo Group and Auroch Digital. We're going to be exploring some of the things we've implemented into our routines to make remote working beneficial to us. So we're going to be talking about how we both operate as remote/hybrid studios and improve relationships across departments. And we also want to acknowledge that people might feel quite distant when they're working from a remote setting. So we hope the stuff we share in this presentation will help you enhance the relationships within your teams. So before we get fully into this talk, we want to provide this disclaimer and address the elephant in the room. We understand that times are incredibly unstressful at the moment, and this presentation was created prior to the announcement that went out. So we just want to apologise if any of the content that is included comes across as insensitive given the current circumstances.
Thanks for that, Adele. Yeah, another huge disclaimer before we get into the talk. What we'll be discussing and sharing in today's talk has worked for us, and we can only speak about our personal experiences with these approaches. As the theme song from Different Strokes went, which just shows how old I just am. What might be right for you may not be right for some. So please keep that in mind, but hopefully we can share some experiences which you can take into your day-to-day life.
So, why are we talking about remote work? Why is this relevant? Wasn't remote work just a thing of the 2020s? Well, remote working isn't just something that existed for the pandemic. It was a thing before 2020 and continues to be a way in which many companies operate, including both of ours. And this year's SDC is fully online, so our talk is even more relevant. We're hoping in this talk to inspect some of the issues that exist within remote working, such as limited communication opportunities, working in silos, etc. And we also want to examine how we can address these issues and hopefully provide some solutions. To kind of back up this, this was a survey from, or a UK 2022 UK Games Industry Census. And it shows that remote working is absolutely still relevant in the games industry. And this census found that pre-pandemic, 4/5 of the industry worked in office, but in autumn 2021, this shifted to 4/5 working at home. 90% of the industry stated a preference for working at home or a hybrid approach, with just 10% seeking a full-time return to the office, as you can see in this bottom part of the graph here. So how do we accommodate all the people looking to work from home? This is how Sumo Group addressed this issue. In 2022, they created the Future for Work campaign, a cross-studio collaboration project bringing together the talent of Atom Hawk Studios and Sumo Group, and this was released both internally and externally as well. And it addressed how the business was going to be run after the pandemic. And there were three main pillars that this campaign addressed, which was flexibility, stability, and sustainability. In particular, phase 3 of the video mentions flexibility. So this is addressing allowing employees to choose to work remotely or at a studio, or still being able to collaborate. As you can see in this little cute illustration, there's some characters that are working remotely, but they're still able to contribute to those in person. And this is absolutely vital for a company that has 19 global studios, because remote working is naturally built into how Sumo Group is run.
So yes, since 2020, Auroch Digital has proudly been a remote-first studio. Just prior to the pandemic, we had just moved into a new office and were looking forward to the future in our new surroundings. However, due to circumstances outside of our control, we had to move remotely, and it's pretty much been that way ever since. When the time came where we would be allowed to work in the same rooms together, a survey was shared throughout the studio, and the response was that the vast majority of staff would prefer to stay remote. This approach meant that people were able to work in environments that were comfortable to them, and they didn't have to endure the stresses of commuting. It also meant that talented staff from further afield could be part of the Auroch Digital team, myself included. As I stay in Scotland, it meant I could join the Bristol-based team remotely. We also have people from all over the UK and even France and India. Since going fully remote, we've worked on a number of titles, including Warhammer 40,000 Boltgun, Brewmaster Beer Brewing Simulator, and Democracy 4 Console Edition, with more to come in the future too. But how were we able to grow the company and maintain a healthy culture remotely? We'll get into this more later, but we encourage staff to pursue their hobbies and look to connect with people with passions they share.
So now that you know a little bit more about us and our studios, let's take a look at the structure of this talk. So go for it, go for it.
I was going to say, first up, we have contented colleagues. Then we have alleviating loneliness, followed by encouraging collaboration and improving studio-wide relationships. And finally, the final takeaways: no food involved.
So first up, we have contented colleagues, which highlights the ways in which colleagues feel fulfilled in their roles while working remotely. So this is a diagram that many of you might be familiar with. It is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It was created in 1950 and in the 1950s, and is often a motivational. It is a motivational psychological theory often linked to work motivation. So the bottom pillars of this diagram show the basic needs that need to be fulfilled before a person can move from the bottom of the pyramid to the top. So, it has the basic stuff like you need water and shelter in order to feel secure. So then you can get healthy and, develop needs that aren't as, super important. So if we apply this to a work setting, we can view this model as a way of increasing employees' productivity and happiness in the workplace. So let's apply this to a hypothetical new starter who's joined Sumo. How would we get this person who has never worked in a studio in person? They've finished higher education completely remotely. They have or have had in the past social anxiety. They're introverted. They have low self-esteem, and they're not formally trained in the role. How do we get this person from the bottom of the pyramid all the way to the top and beyond? Here are some ways we recommend going about this, and some ways that Sumo aims to improve the well-being of their people. So we have flexible working hours. If you allow people to work in a way that suits them best, obviously that's going to improve their mental well-being, and it helps parents and people who have other commitments outside of work.
Yeah, also as well, it helps people who are maybe more productive in the afternoons compared to the mornings, and it offers that sort of flexibility to get the most out of people when you've got those working hours. Yeah, benefits as well and ways of feeding into this. So number of benefits which Sumo Group offers, such as duvet days and all that sort of stuff. We've also got different support. We've got healthcare, all that sort of stuff comes as benefits, which is greatly appreciated, and that's another way to create contented colleagues for sure.
Yeah, and to kind of build on this, there's also Runway, the anonymous and open feedback system that we have. Alongside benefits, this allows our people to kind of like feedback to people they normally might not like talk to. So like higher ups and stuff, what they actually want to see and hear in the business. So having this sort of system in place just really helps people's voices get heard.
Yes, then encouragement to pursue hobbies. So one way in which we work as a studio, definitely at Auroch, is to pursue those shared interests that we have. So whether it's people who are creative in their art, or maybe people who enjoy football, sports, or other activities, we encourage them to speak about it on Teams, on Discord, that kind of thing, and like look to benefit each other with tips, like shared trips, that sort of things. If people are stay close together, that sort of thing. So yeah.
There's also opportunities of growth. So once you're higher up that Maslow hierarchy of, okay, I feel safe in my role, I feel fulfilled, I maybe want to like look at how I can expand my skill sets, and having opportunities for growth within the business. So you allow your people to take courses that might not necessarily be related to their role, work collaboratively with other studios, and stuff like this, like SDC, learning about stuff that normally wouldn't be in your day-to-day role as well.
Yes, and then you've also got conflict resolution from seniors. So yeah, this is definitely in case there's any issues that need raised. Like it's like just to have an open door basically to hopefully address those issues as soon as possible, whether that be through line management, studio director, that kind of thing. People are always open and available to chat. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is super important for remote working as well, because obviously there isn't that same level of face-to-face communication. Some things might be misread within messages, or like things get lost. There's a lot going on, especially on Teams and other platforms like that. There's so many channels. So having seniors address things in a way that isn't taking things personally, and just like it's super useful to have those leaders who are good at conflict resolution, because it just like sells the whole team. And so I want to introduce you to a phrase that some of you might have heard before. It's something I encountered first at Sumo. It is the always assume positive intent. And this refers to the assumption that all your co-workers are working to the same goals as you. They have the best interests in mind of both yourself and the company. And well, no one's out to get you. It might sound silly, but if you've been in unsafe workplaces in the past, or if you're new to the role or industry, those kind of negative thoughts can exist. So it's always really good to remind yourself of the positive intent you're surrounded by. So this is a quote from Chinzia from Code Coven, who in a interview we did about together about inclusive workplaces. She said, you can't have trust without the assumption of positive intent. And it's just really awesome to hear someone else in the industry backing up this idea of positive intent. It just shows how important it is to building a welcoming, inclusive, and healthy working environment. So this is a resource I wanted to share at this point. It is a course by Safe in Our World, which is available on YouTube for free. It is a guide to self-advocacy speaking, and it taught the importance of like not jumping to conclusions, especially in an online context. It talks about using the slow brain rather than the quick one. So this refers to not jumping to conclusions, not quickly assuming something, having that slow brain of, okay, why did someone say this? What do they mean? And then if you apply that also to the assumption of positive intent, what is that person trying to do to better the workflows or the business in general? And all the resources for this course can be found within the video descriptions as well. And here's the link for the YouTube channel. So this was one of the resources I was provided when I did this course. It is Safe in Our World's Human Handbook. It's a lot to look at, but basically it is really useful for outlining your personal boundaries at work, explaining how you best work with others, and your communication styles. So to break this down into example, this is one of the sections that I filled in about being in meetings. And I found this really useful to provide to my line manager and close co-workers so that your peers can better understand how to collaborate with you. Everyone's different, and the better we can help support and accommodate people, the better the sense of support and the further we'll travel up that hierarchy I mentioned earlier. So in this being a meeting section, I outlined my preference for being provided an agenda before calls, and this helps me focus when I'm in there because I know exactly what to expect. And I also mentioned that I prefer context before being called out of the blue. A simple, do you have time for a call? Nothing bad is super helpful. And my line manager, Charlie, shout out, has absolutely taken this on board, and it's just really helped with like relieving my anxiety. And this is absolutely different for everyone. I know a lot of people who, as long as they've got like the little available icon on Teams, they're absolutely happy for you to just call them out of the blue. So, yeah. So there are also tools you can use within the software that you have as well. So for example, with Microsoft Teams, you can schedule focus time where you don't want to be interrupted. You can display various status messages, like I've mentioned earlier. So it's just really important to work out the boundaries within your team, as it's just so vital for improving your communication. And then once you've all agreed on those boundaries, make sure you respect them.
So next up is alleviating loneliness, which is a big issue for remote working. Here we look at the ways we tackle this issue and try to ensure that staff feel like they are surrounded by supportive colleagues. One important aspect of socialisation in workspaces is, of course, water cooler talk. How do we bring in the element of small talk back into remote working? Bonding over non-related work topics in a safe environment so that work isn't just about work. It allows for important time to bond as a team and decompress. Teams and Discord are often used in a business sense to collaborate and communicate about certain parts of the projects we work on. But what's to say that these channels can't be used to bring people closer together by sharing subjects and hobbies they have in common? That's exactly what we do at Auroch Digital and Sumo Group. One of the vital aspects of communicating remotely is to respect boundaries and give colleagues ample notice if anything arises that isn't pre-agreed. Say, for example, you have a question about a piece of work that someone else is involved in. You might think, I'll just give this person a call and they can chat through it, but they may be busy with something else. And this call could disrupt their workflow. The correct thing to do would be, as Adele said previously, it would be to message them beforehand and give a bit of time for them to respond and prepare themselves for the question you will be raising. Having rules like this in place ensures that people aren't overwhelmed and can manage their workload on their own terms as much as possible. As we established in the previous slide, providing outlets for staff to share their passions for hobbies means that they can develop their personal relationships and experience the things they love. Some of the ways we do this include lunchtime sushi making sessions where staff can take to the kitchen and roll out their favourite kinds of sushi, all while getting help or tips from others. Then you've got miniature painting sessions, and this is something which we're both big fans of at Sumo Group and Auroch Digital. Sumo Group has held afternoon miniature painting sessions for colleagues to unwind and paint their favourite figures, while Auroch Digital hosts days dedicated to tabletop games and painting miniatures. It's something which unites a lot of us. Then we've got the Auroch Digital clubs. So at Auroch Digital, we have a number of clubs we run which cover a wide variety of topics. Some of these include Fitness Club, where people can share their fitness goals and encourage colleagues with their progress. It's also where we've hosted step challenges for random teams to gain the most steps in a week. This encourages people to get out and about on their breaks or after work as well. Fight Club, not as threatening as it first sounds. Fight Club sees staff members who are enthusiastic about fighting video games to come together and duke it out online. This encourages people to improve their skills at a certain game and is a great way to introduce folks to fighting games in a friendly and fun environment. Now, we do also have something called Creative Club, which has become a phenomenon at Auroch Digital since it first started. It takes place after work and it gives creative people an outlet to share in their hobbies in a fun and relaxing space. It also provides a platform for those who are working on their own projects to do so alongside their peers. It's wholesome, it's fun, and it's something many of our staff can't miss each week. These clubs are one of the reasons how we can grow closer together and collaborate more effectively at work.
I just love this little shrine at the bottom made by the Creative Club.
Yeah, shout out Joe McPhee.
Portraits.
Yes. Creator of the Creative Club. So there you go. So what exactly does working remotely look like in game development? Well, for the last few years, Auroch Digital developed Warhammer 40,000 Boltgun, and it was released in May 2023. As work on the game started during the pandemic, the game was born through remote working, and this carried on all the way through to the game's release and beyond. Whether it was building business relationships with stakeholders, working on the game's art, code, design, marketing, QA, production, or programming, the vast majority of work was done remotely. The key thing that made this work, it was clear communication through departments and updates from the team. Regular calls and meetings helped everyone get on the same page and deliver the game's initial vision. As it was a game we developed, Focus Entertainment published the title, and most of our work could be done from our homes. They are based in France and we are based in the UK, so that was always going to be the plan in this game's development. The game was promoted in a variety of ways with the traditional previews and reviews from gaming outlets, but we also attended in-person events so players could play the game before it was out. We had previews and Steam festivals, trailers created from afar, and social media campaigns made remotely. And when it was time for the game to be released on the 23rd of May, it's safe to say that critics and fans alike thoroughly enjoyed their time slaying the heretics and couldn't get enough. From Steam and critic reviews to the comments we received on social media, we were delighted with how the game was received and couldn't have been prouder to have done so remotely. So what did we at Auroch learn from creating Warhammer 40,000 Boltgun remotely? Firstly, there's a greater trust in staff created when they are left to work where they feel comfortable. We do offer hybrid and office-based work, but the vast majority of staff opt for remote. There's a great understanding in the staff who are given the flexibility to work where they like, are happier and content with their life-work balance. The trust given to us staff to work well remotely goes a long way to ensuring that the work done on the project is as good as it can be. There are so many tools to use for remote working to communicate effectively, whether it be written messages through Teams, video or voice calls, and Teams or Discord. There are great ways to connect with the rest of the team and the questions and ask any questions or provide input on a subject which falls under your discipline. On the subject of communication, working remotely is a great way for people to talk about their work and build their presentation skills. As it's not a case of walking up to someone's desk and chatting about what they're working on, it gives members of staff who are working on these parts to discuss it with the team and present their work in a way which works for them. With the success of Warhammer 40,000 Boltgun and the recently released DLC, which at time of recording, we're doing this live by the way, launched yesterday, Forges of Corruption, plug. It just goes to show that anything is possible when working remotely. Like the previous section, it's not uncommon to feel far away from the rest of your team. We look at ways to ensure that everyone is on the same page and working well together. In a recent video, a number of Auroch Digital staff were interviewed, and in there, they shared their thoughts on how they work together on the various projects we have taking place at the moment.
So this is a little GIF preview of that video. Everyone from Sumo who is currently watching this talk, you can find this full recording on Dojo. However, for everyone who might be watching externally, here's some key quotes from that video. So we have a bunch here, but they generally talk about, you know, like how lovely the people are here. We have a lot of pride and passion in what we're working on. It's been lovely to be part of a studio where you generally are supported. There's always someone to chat to, always something going on, and yeah, that my favorite thing about working here is the people and the community, which is lovely. So, on the other hand, one way of encouraging collaboration would potentially be to reintroduce that in-person element. So within group marketing, the team I'm in, we have bi-yearly meetups. These are called group marketing strategy days. These are 2 days of in-person brainstorming and team bonding. They include presentations, game demos, group work, woo sharing, which is where we congratulate different members of the team on what they've done and, you know, all shout woo together like woo woo woo. It's become a whole thing. We've got like disco lights and music. It's great. And we also have team meals and activities. This is super valuable face-to-face time, and it just gives an insight into the teams and eliminates those silos and hierarchy that you might get when working remotely. You know, you collaborate with the more senior people within your team on the completely same level, so it's really lovely. And then, of course, we have SDC. As previously mentioned, this year's SDC is fully remote, but the teams involved have been working hard to make sure that these bullet points here are still completely relevant and achieved, even when remote. My first SDC was last year, and it was a few months after I started. And it was just super pivotal to me in building my confidence and getting to know the members of my team and the wider Sumo Group studios. So for anyone who doesn't know externally, SDC is 2 days of cross-studio collaboration accessible to everyone in the business. There's networking and socialization of hundreds of attendees, there's shared learnings, and it really fosters this sense of community as well. But what if remote is the only option? Let's say you're from a larger studio with that doesn't really have a budget for these kind of events. Maybe you're from an indie studio or a team that is super global and coming together just isn't feasible. How would you still foster that same sense of community without those in-person touch points? And that's where we return to this. If you didn't have chance earlier, please go to menti.com, use the code or use the QR code here to provide some words on how you would suggest a team bond remotely. I'm going to go to the other slide and hope it's there, but the QR code will be available as well. So yeah, we've got some responses. So like we mentioned earlier, we've got the occasionally meeting up. Yeah, social events online, cross-discipline buddies. I love that idea of you know, it really hammers in what we're talking about with SDC this year, doesn't it, Simon, with like collaborating across studios.
Yeah,
Definitely.
totally. Even thinking about cross-discipline stuff like that, I feel like it's, especially working remotely, like sometimes you just get used to seeing the same people all the time, and like you might not get to know the rest of the studio. But I feel like if you are doing that socializing and like putting yourself out there, like you do get to know a lot more of the studio. And when it comes to these in-person events, like it just makes it so much more beneficial.
Absolutely, yeah, definitely the idea of putting yourself out there. Simon came up with this concept of the talk, and you know, he like asked a large team of people who wanted to be involved, and I put myself out there, and I wouldn't have met Simon without like that first initial reach out. So definitely doing that. Yeah, and sharing those common goals, like we mentioned earlier, that assumption of positive intent, everyone having some of the things they're working to. Yeah, and regular online catch-ups, absolutely.
Yeah, totally.
Nice, thank you, everyone who responded.
Nice one, thanks so much. So if you're from a larger company that has multiple studios, how do you apply everything we've mentioned previously to a wider scale? Oh, there was supposed to be a quote here from Nina Adams, Auroch studio director, which we'll cover in the next slide. Don't worry, we got you there.
Wait.
Got you there. I even got Adele with that this morning, by the way. People like, you've not put that quote in. I was like, look at the next slide.
Like, what are you up to, Simon?
There you go. So Nina said, Auroch has been remote first since COVID. When at first it was forced, but later realised the benefits, the flexibility offered our staff. Since then, we gave everyone the option of working remote, hybrid, or from our Bristol office. By offering our staff the flexibility to work where they like, it allows them to complete tasks in a place which feels comfortable and provides a way for them to produce their best work. In addition to this, we can employ talented staff from all over the UK and other countries, which wouldn't be otherwise possible. It isn't without its issues, of course, but we have put a lot of time and effort into creating an environment which allows for great games to be created and staff to be satisfied with how they work. Thanks, Nina, for that. Lovely stuff. So by working with more people throughout the studio and across other studios, we're able to share resources and tools we use to positively benefit our work. If everyone has the same access to the same things, there is a great sense of everyone being treated as equals, and it helps to build a real sense of community. If everyone is on the same page, then those involved have a better understanding of deadlines, expectations, and workflows. Clear communication helps everyone work better. Of course, as we've said throughout this talk, bonding over shared hobbies improves relationships across studios too. If there's a miniature that's recently been painted, you can be sure the majority of Aurochs want to hear about it. And see it, of course.
Yeah, so let's have a look at our final takeaways and revisit what we've learned. So remember that hypothetical person I mentioned earlier, the one we wanted to help move from the bottom of the hierarchy all the way to the top and beyond. Some of you may have wondered, like, how did this person even get employed in the first place? You know, what is this? Well, let's remove that hypothetical and reveal that person's me. So I never worked in a legit studio. I finished my higher education completely remotely. I did my undergraduate third year remote and then finished a master's degree as well remotely. I used to have social anxiety, and I was previously not trained in the role of social media coordinator. So I know I'm only one person, but I guess it's kind of like a mini case study of like it is possible to have worked fully remotely and still get a job in the industry and still feel supported and contented in your role.
So if you were to take away 3 things from this talk to implement into your working life, we would say that they would be to ensure clear communication, provide space for colleagues to share hobbies, and adapt to the needs of your people. And remember, this is going to be horribly out of time, but I'm here for it.
It's the chaos. It's good. It's good.
It is,
and
it.
Remember, always assume positive intent.
Nailed it. Nailed it.
Nailed it. Flawless. Thank you, everyone. Any questions? I haven't got the questions things up, so I'm not sure if I can see any. Just FYI, in case you're like, gone quiet.
Yes, it's all good. Well, I was going to say I could relay them, Adele, if you want.
Absolutely,
I've got them up. Right, perfect. I was going to say in order, so thanks everyone for your questions.
Thank you.
So the first one is from Daniel Stevenson, who says, did you ever look into virtual office spaces, similar to the networking rooms in SDC this year?
Yeah, in a previous role I was in, we used a software called GatherTown. So it was almost like Habbo Hotel kind of vibes. So you have a little character and you create a little space, and you can it works on like proximity chat. So you walk up to someone, and then if you've got your camera on and mic unmuted, you can talk to them. And we used to have like Friday meetings in like a little marketing share space, which was really lovely. So definitely check that out. But I think after you get over a certain amount of people, it is paid for. So there are free options, but yeah.
Nice one. Adele, just you mentioned about Habbo Hotel, like we were speaking, I know this is totally off topic. We were talking about it yesterday, how it's coming back. Habbo Hotel is coming back. So there you go. Look out for that.
Before my time, unfortunately. Sorry to say it.
I had a different strokes quote in there, so I'm definitely
exactly
old. Daniel, thanks very much for that question. Charlie, we'll go to you next. Charles Poyser, who says, thanks so much, love this talk. How did you both find adapting to remote working at first? Did it get easier as it went on? I'm happy to answer as well. Yeah, so I worked previously remotely when I first worked in games and PR back in 2018. And at that point, I was sort of working like adjacent to my living room. So I was spending the whole day in my living room and then at night in the living room, and you just don't leave this space other than to walk the dog, basically. So I feel like if you've experienced remote working, you need to find out what works for you and what doesn't work for you. So basically, I'm fortunate I've got a space where I can have an office upstairs, and like once I'm finished for the day, that's me. I basically don't go back into this room unless I need something from it, like kind of thing. So it can be tricky, but like we spoke about in the talk, like putting yourself out there and sort of finding shared interests with people definitely helps to alleviate that loneliness and get used to remote working and all that stuff as well. So yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. I currently have that issue of I work in my living room and then it's the same shared space, but I have a dedicated like desk space and um also a work laptop. So when I finish work, I close that laptop and it's just ended, you know, that kind of thing. It is definitely a lot of like self-discipline, I'd say, to make sure you have that work-life balance.
Yeah, totally. Charlie, thanks for that. Next question is from Ben Goldstone, who says, how do you feel onboarding plays into building a remote team? It can be challenging to build that team culture when you aren't surrounded by folks. So yeah, like ourselves at Auroch, like we've just even speaking about the marketing team, so we've had 2 new members of staff join us this year, and sort of like I think it's been a thing for the last few years when you're working remotely, when you first meet up and you're like, you're not as tall as I thought you were, or you're shorter than I thought you were, that kind of stuff. But I think that just goes to show like how comfortable you are with speaking to these people, and like you're comfortable saying that. Like, because the first time you meet someone in person, it can sometimes be awkward, but if you've built that sort of like good relationships with them remotely and all that sort of stuff, even within a few months, like is 2 people on our team, Will and Ellie, they both started recently, and it's sort of like they just feel like part of the team. Like it's not, there's nothing like, I don't feel like I don't know them or anything like that. Like we just chat about stuff that we see. Like it can be about games, it can be about work, it can be about whatever. Like, but just building those positive relationships definitely help.
Yeah, definitely. And in the 2 roles I've had in the industry, something that my teams did was schedule, well, they encourage you to schedule a meeting with everyone in the team you're in, which can get quite tiring if you're in a team of like 20 plus people. But it is useful to kind of know the nuances of everyone's roles and also meet them all and have that like one-to-one time with every member of the team, even if you're not directly working with them on a day-to-day basis. So that's one of the ways that I've seen it help with the onboarding process when you're working remote.
Yeah, totally. And I will skip ahead a few questions here, but only because it ties into what we've been talking about. So Will, who I was talking about, has asked, question for Simon, do you think group games such as drawing or word games are good for boosting team morale? Yes, Will, I absolutely do. So one thing we kind of do as a team is we play, I think it's Spellcast on Discord, or it's like Gartic Phone on Discord. And it's just like something that's like 10 minutes, 15 minutes or something like that, just to like have a laugh together and just like give you that something to look forward to like have a bit of fun with your team and that sort of stuff. Like it's not serious, although there are some people on the marketing team who insist they must win no matter the cost. Not naming any names, but but yeah, yeah, definitely like activities like that can be a huge help. So Ben and Will, thanks very much for the questions. 2 for 1. Gary Lewis asks, will you be sharing slides of this presentation? I know it'll be available publicly, but the actual slides, Adele, do you know if they'll be available?
I don't know, but I think you can contact us after this if you want a copy of the presentation, because I know we did share some resources, so yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Gary, thanks for that. Then we've got Lee Taylor next, who says, would you consider social physical meetups as a bad thing, as they only include local groups? I think not, because I think about the situations that we have at Auroch Digital where people are based within Bristol, but people can sort of come from further afield, like that people might stay in Bath, for example, or Wales, things like that, like who can meet up in person. And even we've had sort of like Auroch north of England, like people who are in and around the Leeds area meet up, or like I know there's a few other Aurochs in Scotland who would be happy to meet up with and that sort of stuff. So I don't think it's a bad idea or a bad thing as such, because again it just helps. It doesn't exclude anyone because you can't help where you stay, kind of thing. So yeah, I feel like they can only enhance the relationships remotely, because like you'd be like, oh, did you see this thing was in Glasgow, for example? I might say to someone who stays relatively close to me, and that sort of thing. Adele, I don't know how you feel.
Yeah, no, I get where this question's coming from, because as someone who works remotely and then quite a lot of the team is based in Sheffield, I do feel that kind of strange, not alienation, but I know where that feeling comes from. But I think it's just up to the team and also yourself to communicate that you're feeling this, and for the team to then organize things that are a bit more inclusive of everyone in the team that works remote, because you don't want to get into that like idea of silos and hierarchy and like cliques and stuff. That just doesn't work, especially when people are from everywhere. So I understand where it's coming from, but it can be avoided, and I don't think it should um stop people from meeting up in person that want to, because that is obviously very valuable face-to-face time.
Yeah, totally. As we went into detail with, like, as much as we love remote working and all that stuff, like the face-to-face time which we have with the marketing days, like Sumo Group, Auroch also has like 2 days a year. We meet up at like MooCon, for example, as the conference which we have at Auroch, or it's SDC or whatever in years gone by. Meeting in face-to-face, it makes that time even more special because you don't see these people all that often, like in person, kind of thing. So yeah. So thanks, Lee, for that question. And finally, Gary Lewis is asked, can you share resources for the turn to remote work? That was great info. So I think, yeah, you'd asked earlier about, will you be sharing slides of this presentation? We should be able to make it available somewhere. If it's not, absolutely, like we're more than happy to share it because it's available to the public. So should all be good. All good. And that's all the questions we have.
Awesome.
I've ticked them all as answered, so it should all be good.
Thank you. Thanks everyone for questions and for tuning in as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. And your submissions, your questions, for being here.
Yeah.
Really appreciated. Thanks so much.